Okay, I'm back with an update on the Panzerkampfwagen 4. Last time I left off, I had the model painted or primed and getting ready to paint. So, as I mentioned in previous videos, I have never done a Panzer Gray vehicle, so this is the first one I was going to do. And in order to do that, I ordered the Viejo Panzer Colors Model Air set because it looked like the one that would work the best, and I really like the Model Air paints. Figured I'd stick with them. So I used German Gray for the overall color, and generally I can use these paints right from the bottle. This one seemed a little bit thicker than the Model Air I've used in the past, and this seems to be just this bottle out of the set. So I don't know if it's slipped through quality control or if it's just an inconsistency in the viscosity, but I did have to thin it just a little bit with the thinning medium. So, you know, just a quick note there, and it just goes to show that, you know, from bottle to bottle of paint it can be different, but it worked out fine. I was able to get the entire model painted. I painted the upper and lower hull separately. Reason being, I just like to be able to get my angles all around to make sure I get good solid coverage underneath. And then once I got it finished, then I glued the upper hull to the lower hull. I did the turret, and I also, before I actually did that, I painted the inside white. I know it's supposed to be more of a cream color, but you're not really going to see it, and you'll be able to see just a little bit through this hatch right here, but there'll be a figure there blocking it for the most part, so I figured just plain white would be fine. And I'm going to dirty it up and weather it, so I guess it'll be okay. But anyway, got the turret painted. Then I also painted the idlers, the drive sprockets, the return rollers, and the wheels. Before I get to the wheels, I'll talk a little bit about the idlers and the sprockets. Just real basic, just sprayed them. What I do, for those of you of the beginner types that are watching this, makes it a little bit easier, is I use the Tiki Tack gummy stuff that teachers use to hang posters or notices or whatever. People also use it in offices. It's a temporary way of sticking something up without marring the surface, and it won't tear the paper from whatever's being hung up. So it's really cheap, and it's good has multiple uses for modeling, but this is one of them. Just stick a little bit on there, take a toothpick or a cocktail stick depending on what part of the world you're from, and then you have you can get behind, all around, and not have to worry about getting too much overspray on your hands, whatever. So that's a nice way to paint these. So I got those painted. The return wheels, I used those. I just stuck those into this foam, sprayed them really quick, and then used my Polyscale acrylic grimy black for the rubber portion. I like this particular color for rubber because it's not just a stark flat black. Looks a little more realistic, you know, simulates older rubber a little bit better, I think, and it seems to work out pretty well. So once these were painted with the gray, then I just used a brush and just carefully applied the paint to the rubber portion around this way and then on the surface there. And the nice thing about these particular return rollers is the metal part is lower than the rubber portion, so it's easy to paint that without getting the gray part. So got those painted. Whoops. Painted the tracks. I used the primer, just the regular surface primer, to prime the tracks. Then I used the German Armor Brown from the Panzer Color Model Air set, and used that to give it just a slight reddish cast. And then later on, once I get to the weathering process, I'll dirty these up, do some washes on them, and then use some silver to kind of highlight the contact points on the tracks. Then, as far as the wheels go, these can be really tedious, and I really don't care to paint wheels that much. So it's always, I like to find a way that makes it a little quicker. And this is nothing new. I mean, there's a lot of people that do this, but what I do is I take some of my masking tape and tape it down sticky side up long enough to fit, you know, a row of the wheels. Then I just stick them on. Then I take the polyscale grimy black, and I try not to be too sloppy, but I'm not exactly really careful either. But I paint the rubber portions of the wheels all the way around, and then around here, and I don't worry about getting it on the part that's supposed to be metal on the real vehicle. So once I get that done and that dries, I take just a regular circle template. I bought this one at Office Depot or Michael's or someplace, but they're really cheap and they're really handy because you can use them for other stuff other than this. But what I do is I find the appropriate circle size that will fit around the metal portion of the wheel. Once I determine that, then I take masking tape and I tape off all around to prevent overspray from going through these other holes. And you can see a little bit of the gray right there from where, you know, it wasn't masked. And then I simply place it where on the wheel, spray that portion, move down here, spray that one. By the time I get up to this one's dry enough that it won't be marred from this touching it. Spray that one, and go on until I have all the wheels painted. And it makes it a lot quicker and a lot easier, and it's a lot less tedious than trying to do it by hand, because, you know, I like my coffee. I'm also, you know, not that young anymore, so I shake a little bit more than I used to when I was younger. So it's a lot easier to just spray it really quick than try and be really careful and paint it with a brush. And I've already got the airbrush out already for doing all this, so it doesn't take any extra time. So I got all that painted. So the next part I did kind of would fall under weathering, I guess, but I like to do it early on. Is I use silver, and on the teeth of the drive sprockets and on the surface that comes in contact with the tracks of the idler wheels, I painted silver to simulate wear from the contact between either the sprocket teeth or the idler wheels and the inside of the tracks, which are metal, of course. So that just kind of helps to, you know, add a little bit of realism, because that type of stuff wears through the paint pretty quickly. And it's kind of bright right now because I did use silver. Some people like to use pencils like graphite, but I use silver because by the time I get done weathering, doing washes and weathering and so forth, it'll dull that down quite a bit without eliminating it. So it'll make it look a little bit more realistic. So everything's painted and ready to go. On the I left some of the hatches, like the commander's hatches, or yeah, the commander's hatch and the side hatch where the crew member will be sitting. That will be in open position. I sprayed those right on the on the runner, and then I painted the inside as well when I did the same colors on the rest of the model. So everything was painted and ready to go. So the next step was to spray the entire model, the main part of the model, with Future Pledge Floor Care. It's a floor finish called, people call it Future. It used to be called Future, I guess, but now it's, these other names. But it's basically the same stuff. It's very, very thin. It doesn't take very much. It's super easy to spray. Cleans up with water, and just spray that over the whole model for two reasons. Number one, it gives a nice even coat on the whole thing for whenever I start doing my washes and weathering, and also gives a nice smooth glossy finish to apply the decals, because decals stick better to a glossy finish than a flat finish, and most paints are kind of a flat finish. Some people like to, if they're going to apply a decal, say right here, they'll just use a little bit of clear right there. I just go ahead and spray the whole thing. That way it's consistent on the whole model, and you don't have to worry about fluctuations in color with washes and weathering. So all of that is done. So the next part, the next video, I will be dealing with the decals, and what I'll do is I'll talk a little bit about what different types of decals there are, what I use to apply them, and just kind of go through all that. So that's it for this time. Model's painted, ready for decals. So the next video I will talk about decals. See you then.